What's up? What is going on in the world of Macroverse? Um, Man, it's good to be back. It's been such a long 2 weeks, and I am ecstatic to finally be back. Welcome to another Tiny's Universe. I am your good friend, Tiny Universe, aka Tiny, aka Scott, whatever you want to call me. Um, this is my home, your home for all the good Macroverse juicy news and content and stuff. So, I've been dying and dying and dying for October to come around, and we've been kind of dropping crumbs and letting you get little hints of stuff. So tonight I'm excited to bring Evan in and finally talk about some of the stuff that we've been leading up to. And man, I'm just excited to get into it. So with that being said, Evan, where are you, sir?
What's up?
What's up?
I am excited to get into it also. Yeah, so first of all, we weren't here last week. We were excited about being here last week, but we weren't here last week because there was a pretty major storm that rolled into Tiny's neck of the woods and somehow ties into what we're going to talk about tonight with the horrors of the past that are being transformed into something wonderful. So I don't know. He hasn't admitted to going cannibal just yet, but it sounds like a pretty harrowing week of no power and no food and dealing with the aftermath of the hurricane in Florida. So just, I want to say it on the stream, Tiny. I'm just glad you're okay. Your family's okay, that, rebuilding and all that can now commence and, can talk about comics and fun stuff, but we were worried about you for a minute there. So glad things are okay.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I mean, I'm just excited to be back. I think, last week the storm was coming right during the stream, and I was just thinking, like I've been waiting for this. Like, you couldn't wait a day or two. Come on. And then,
yes.
Once the power went out and everything, man, it was like same thing. Like it just kept snowballing. But I am kind of been keeping up with the little bit of details that have been released, and man, I'm just stoked to get into it, to be honest. Like I've been waiting.
Let's get into it. I gotta. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I mean, as always, there's new stuff. There's new stuff on Drip. There's a lot of stuff we're working on, but let's really talk about authentic editions and pre-code horror, which is what we announced this past Thursday. It's what we've been working up to for about a year now. And what I will say is I will continue to tease a lot of the stuff that's coming behind this with things that will be announced, which will, we think, continue to blow people's minds. But this is like the big beginning of the next phase of actually all of Macroverse. And so leading into that, give a little bit of background. So, we started Macroverse 5 years ago as a digital comics company. We launched a traditional mobile app designed to reinvent the digital experience for comics. We launched about 1,000 episodes of content on the mobile app. That app is still on iOS and Android. All the content is free right now as we've been building up to this kind of next phase, this next generation of everything that we've been working on. After that, we very much fell down the Web3 rabbit hole and got very excited about bringing collectability to digital comics, still very much focused on the digital side. We created some very innovative technology around doing that, and then found some real challenges around how that resonated with the traditional comics audience in particular, and some of the user experience issues as far as how do you actually get people that love this stuff the way that I do, the way that Tiny does, the way that we have grown up with collecting comics and holding these things in our physical, hands, and being able to, kind of really enjoy both the art and the story, but also like the reality that comics are a collectible thing. And so we try to do that with digital We haven't given up on doing that with digital, but we realized there was a very interesting missing piece that we felt like we could uniquely bring into the mix, which was actually going back in time for a minute and bringing all these elements together. So what you're starting to see emerge here with the announcement of Authentic Editions is physical comics, digital comics, a whole platform that supports these different incarnations, these different mediums. And what will be coming very clear before the end of this year is how all those things actually tie together through the platform that we've been continuing to build in the background. And so, this is just the beginning of what I legitimately call Macroverse version 3. So, we have learned a ton over the past 5 years. And I think where we're at as a company is, I believe, the only publishing company, the only comics company that can truly claim to be physical, digital, collectible on both sides of those things. And now what you'll see the real fruits of before the end of the year is how that becomes a platform that supports not only our own work, but also really supercharges what creators at every scale can now do across those different mediums. So that's a little bit vague intentionally, but we'll talk specifically about Authentic Editions, and you'll start to pick up some breadcrumbs.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I do, because it's funny. I was on one of the social medias today. I think it was maybe Facebook or something, and someone actually posted in like a comics group, have any of you guys actually written a comic? And if so, how did you do it? And the first thing I said was like, yes, I actually have, and I was like, look up Macroverse, message for questions. And I feel like that's awesome, because there's people, I know for a fact there's people out there that are wondering, how to get their stories out, or how to maybe get an artist for their content that they, like me, they can't draw it. So I don't know. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but in my mind, in my dream, like, that's going to be a place where people can kind of come together to kind of do that kind of stuff, and also, again, get credit for doing it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the mission hasn't changed. We've definitely expanded the toolbox. So, I want to spend a lot of time talking specifically about Authentic Editions, and even more specifically about Pre-Code Horror, which I'm very excited about. But you will start to see some breadcrumbs. If you've been following us for any time at all, you'll probably start to pick up on some of how these things could connect. And if they could connect, that's probably some of how they will connect. But, we also delivered our first batch of mixed print covers for Titan's upcoming release of Heatseeker. We've now signed on with Titan to do all 4 issues for Heatseeker. So there's a lot more mixed print editions coming. And then 2 more series that we're going to do following that. So we're going to see a bunch of mixed print activity going out into the direct market in the comic stores. And then Authentic Editions is this, piece of the puzzle that we've been keeping under wraps now for a little over a year, and a little history about Authentic Editions. So a new member of our team, he's been on board with us for about a year now, a little over a year now. So a gentleman named Adam Fortier. Adam has been in traditional comics publishing for 25 years, is responsible for over 350 million published comics and books. Anyone that remembers the post-Image 90s, he was responsible for bringing Transformers to Dreamwave Comics, which became the #1 selling book the month that Transformers launched with Dreamwave. He's worked with Disney, he's worked with Marvel, he's worked with, every major comics publisher Adam has worked with and has a relationship with. And you can imagine that's opened some doors for us. So, as we've developed a bunch of new relationships, some of which you'll hear about tonight, some of which you'll hear about in the future, part of the evolution of that, as we started looking at traditional publishing, is recognizing that there's a massive move in the comics industry right now where every major publisher is releasing what are called facsimile editions. And Marvel has a range of them, DC has a range of them. And I think what companies have realized is that there's an appetite and an opportunity for collectors who missed out on the original release of key issues, classic comics, who don't want to necessarily go pick up an original copy for hundreds or thousands, or in some cases tens of thousands of dollars to try to acquire a Spider-Man #1, but still want to experience that original history, that original issue. And what we realized is that when you look at facsimile reprints, and even something like Marvel Masterworks, which has done a great job of collecting kind of key moments, key characters, it's still almost impossible to get your hands on complete runs of these classic titles. And if you were to go and buy them on the secondary market, to buy them in, from CGC, or at comic conventions, like, you literally would be talking tens of thousands of dollars to be able to hold these books in your hand, to be able to read them and experience them. And even the collected editions miss a bunch of issues because they're really focused on specific key appearances of certain characters or, favorite storylines. So there's a bunch of issues that have never been reprinted. And then what really led to authentic editions is realizing that even the material that has been reprinted does not look or feel like the original books. So what a lot of people don't realize is when you pick up a reprint of Spider-Man #1, let's say, it's been in many cases redrawn and at the very least recolored. So comics in the 40s, 50s, and 60s were not printed with modern printing technology. They were printed with all, kind of ties in for me as an artist, if you know my work, they were printed with dots. Every color that you see on a traditional, on a comic from the 40s through the 70s is a series of dots. And there's a real art form for colorists being able to communicate, a light blue versus a dark blue. A light blue versus a dark blue is really the density of the dot pattern that creates a optical illusion when you view something from a distance as to what color that blue is. So there's this incredible artistry to this classic material that's essentially disappeared from the world unless you actually acquire something from that era. And so the insight that we had is we thought there would be a real interest and an opportunity to create a publishing imprint and a product line that is not just reprinting this material, but is painstakingly reverse engineering it back to its original format. And so when we're talking about, authentic editions, we're talking about getting in your DeLorean, traveling back in time, and pulling these things off the spinner rack in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and having it printed on the original paper stock, the original printing techniques, so that the dots are the dots that were used in that era. Like we've created a combination of technology and very bespoke printing techniques, including original equipment to be able to reproduce this material in truly the closest thing to the original book that you could possibly get. The only difference is it'll cost you, $10 as opposed to 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 to get your hands. I think so. I'll pause there, Tiny, but it's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm literally like so overjoyed. I'm gonna tear up. It's ridiculous. It's you answered the one question I had, which was paper stock and original paper, because I mean, when you talk about original feel, I mean, most of the modern stuff these days is, even if it's not a glossy computer print, it's still kind of on that glossy printed paper. And, I feel like no matter how you print the ink, it's still the paper texture and stuff, and it's the crispiness. And so that was one of the biggest things, and you answered that, and that to me is just mind-blowing. I don't know, man, it's definitely, in my mind,
we've got, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I want you to finish your thought, but we've gotten so obsessed with this process that we've even developed a special perfume that gets infused into the stock so that it actually smells like a comic book from the 1950s.
And it's funny because actually what I was going to say is, you know, like the paper, it smells different. I mean, I've actually opened some of my books recently and gone to like a friend of mine and just been like, smell this, you know, like off the pages, because it takes you back, you know, 50, 60 years, if not more, you know, sometimes more than that, sometimes a little bit less. But I mean, like where I'm at, you know, a lot of times in between like 40 to 60 years where these things have just been sitting in basements or in grandma's, you know, attic or something, you know, and they just have this smell that you know, like, you know it, but it's kind of hard to describe. So that again is just, to me, is just I kind of am not surprised, you know, because I know you guys, but I think like I wouldn't expect anything less, you know, than the best. But I think people that see this stuff coming out are just going to be completely mind blown, you know, because I mean, I can only imagine, you know, quality wise, it's going to be phenomenal. But I'm just over the
I can't
top,
wait.
Like,
I'm excited that you're excited. I cannot wait for people to get these in their hands because it really is a special experience. So that's the kind of the publishing imprint as a whole. Authentic Editions, you know, made by Macroverse. We're starting with this first collection of pre-code horror comics, and we'll talk a little bit about why pre-code horror, why it's a great starting point, and then I'll tease a little bit of what's coming after that. But this gives us a way to really supercharge our platform and the offering that, you know, we have as far as content. And it allows us to talk directly to the core comic customer, the core comic collector, and bring them into the rest of the ecosystem, you know, that we've been building. And so we're using Kickstarter as the initial launch pad for Authentic Editions, you know, with this pre-code horror series. You know, the campaign page is up right now. So if you go to macroverse.com, you'll now see the new landing page, which will link you to the Kickstarter page. You can pre-register to get notified for when the campaign launches. And then, you know, these will also be limited edition in of their own right. So, you know, we fully expect this first collection to, you know, again, not financial advice, which is weird to say now that we're talking about printed comic books, but we do actually expect these to be, you know, to hit secondary pretty quickly and start to go up because you cannot get this collection. So let's talk about pre-code horror, and I'm actually gonna minimize us so you can see the background here.
One quick question before we get started, because I love the banner back there. Who did the artwork?
Funny you should ask. So that's what we're going to talk about. So what is pre-code horror? Okay, I'm gonna have to do this a different way. What is pre-code horror and why do we pick it? So those people that don't know comic book history, you know, comics became popular for the masses in the 30s around Superman primarily. So obviously there were comics before that, but Superman, Batman, you know, really were the first big hits. Like Superman number one, I believe, sold over 1 million copies just on the newsstand. You know, when it was 5 cents. And this was like when kids really started to realize like, oh, there's something exciting here. And there had been other comics before that, Western comics and other sorts of genres. But, you know, that really did kick off comics as a medium where there was success in you know, putting out monthly comic books. They weren't just in the newspaper. They were a standalone, you know, medium and a standalone product. And so, you know, that continued. And then into World War II, you started to have lots of experiments around comics. All of a sudden there were new publishers popping up because there was opportunity to, make money and deliver this stuff to kids. And so one of the genres that emerged in the 40s were these collections of essentially anthology series around different subjects. There was sci-fi, there was, all kinds of romance and things like that, and then EC Comics hit the scene and was really the first publisher to embrace horror. And so in the 40s and 50s, EC Comics launched things like Tales from the Crypt and introduced the idea of the Crypt Keeper and these very iconic lines of horror comics. And they went nuts, in the best possible way, like things that, really legitimately had no right being sold to kids. Like one of the most iconic covers is a person holding a head that's clearly been decapitated from the body that you can't quite see the wound that's lying on the floor next to it. This is targeted to like 7-year-olds. And at the time, these are the horror movies of the day. So these incredible works of art and storytelling, and also definitely a little mismatched with the audience, but this become this very cult thing over time. And a big part of that is because this legitimately sparked outrage in the kind of moral panic of the day. There were public Senate hearings about comic books in the 50s. And literally, there was a person called Frederick Wortham, which wrote a book called The Seduction of the Innocent, which was all about how comics were destroying the morality of the youth of the day. So this is everything we talk about around social media, everything we talk about around video games, everything that we grew up in around rock music and hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
Every generation has their thing that's destroying the youth. And in the 50s, it was comic books. And so what happened is the reason that Marvel was actually able to rise to become the powerhouse that it is, and it was in no small part because of this. There was a governing body. If you remember music in the 80s, there was the outrage around devil music and all that. And so the music industry got together and said, well, we don't want an external thing to censor us. So we'll create an internal group. And you remember CDs got the, parental guidance, warning, advisory sticker on it. Yeah. So that for comics is called the Comic Code Authority. And if you look at any comic book from after those Senate hearings, there's a little stamp on it which says approved by the Comics Code Authority. And everything before that is considered pre-comics code. And so when we are looking at, what would we put out as our first collection of authentic editions, we found this incredible library, this catalog of pre-code horror comics. And the reason we identified them is, number one, it's this fascinating snapshot of history, of comics history. And then we also started to realize that 15 of the 115 books, which are available in this Kickstarter, are among the most iconic and frankly expensive collectible comics from that era. So one of these books, Suspense Comics #3, which is one of the core images that you're seeing in that image, which I'll figure out a way to pull up, is one of the most iconic comic covers of all time. And literally that book is just sold at auction. I think the last auction that it sold at for a 1.0. So if CGC grading, 1.0 is the lowest grade, sold for $85,000.
But and the crazy thing is there. Well, and that's what I tell people, and that's kind of why I love collecting the older stuff, and I'm so passionate about it. But that 1.0 selling for that much because there's not that many in existence, and that technically is high quality for what's left, at least.
Well, that's it. So the way that we produce these books, the way we're able to create these authentic editions is we have to get our hands on an original copy. So we're literally reverse engineering the process to be able to create reprints at the not really reprints, reproductions at the quality level that we're doing it. So getting, this one on the left is, Suspense Comics #3, the most valuable non-Marvel DC book that you can get. As far as we can identify, there's about 30 of them in existence that have been, verified. Punch Comics #12 is the image that you're seeing on the right, which is another, kind of very iconic cover. There have been tons of homage covers from different publishers to these over the years. Another of the most valuable kind of rare comics of this era. And so that's why we started with this collection. Not only is it this kind of amazing batch of work, but it really is a snapshot in time for an era, for an art form, for kind of the Wild West of, what comics are as a medium. And we felt like if we could bring what is essentially $500,000 in value in this collection to people for, anywhere from $100 to a couple $100 to get a hold of all of these books, that's kind of an amazing thing. So to me, this is like half enterprise, half art project because I'm super excited about what this means for Macroverse and the future of the company and what we're building on top and in the future because of this. But also, I really am passionate about bringing these things to a place where an average person can actually get it in their hands and see what this is and experience this, not only this moment in history, but also this material that I think is legitimately fascinating, entertaining, interesting, and has been such an influence on everything that has come after it. Not only that, many of these iconic covers are from artists that have gone on to become, notable in other areas and other, parts of the comics industry. L.B. Cole, being probably the preeminent one among them, who's had a, just kind of storied career, including, working in and around the early days of Marvel. There's some stuff that Stan Lee wrote in some of this stuff, pre-Marvel, pre-Timely. Like it is just this incredible batch of material that the further I've gotten into it, I'm sure you can kind of tell as I'm talking about it, the more I've gotten to know about it, just the more excited about it that I am. And I can't wait for people to be able to get this stuff, which literally does not exist outside of truly backing up the truck at an auction house.
That's it. No, and especially like you said, to give it all the original, feel and texture and look and smell and just all that authentic, stuff that a true collector that, like me is digging through boxes. That's the only way you're going to get that. I mean, you're not going to go into a new comic book store with a new facsimile. And, other than that, you're not going to get that, that hunted down, old in the box, feel. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, so that's, exactly. I mean, to me, it's just that to me, I mean, like, it doesn't even make sense. Like you guys think of everything.
We do try.
You know what I mean? Like, but I feel like it's, I mean, I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't expect anything less. You did the same thing in Web3. And I mean, like, perfume in the paper. Come on. It's like,
it's the little thing. Yes.
No, it's so, I compare that to like, like I've said it, I work at Lowe's and we do like all the seasonal stuff, but they make like the fake Christmas trees that have like the scented sprays on them and they smell like real trees. And it's like, to me, it's like, wow, like they really go like above and beyond. And I mean, I feel like that's what you're doing there. I mean, like, it's just taking, it's given even more to the collector, I mean, like someone like me that really like grasps onto that old stuff. I mean, there's, there's no way to find that other than you guys now without waiting, 50 years.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that we've really pulled out all the stops for the campaign. So like when that launches, I think we're planning on going live on the 29th. So, if you are interested in this, definitely do pre-register for it. We've got a bunch of really cool like perks and stretch goals and all the stuff that you do with a Kickstarter campaign. But what I think you'll see, when that does launch is, number one, all the range of different titles and books. I mean, one of the things that we've targeted with Authentic Editions as a line is, not just focusing on the key issues, but being able to get a hold of like full runs. And so in this case, that means, something like Chamber of Chills, which is another kind of iconic title from that era. I wish I had it handy to pull it up, but one of the most famous covers, which actually was used as a Misfits cover as well back in the day, where it's a skeleton's hand holding a wine glass, and there's this beautiful woman's face on one side, and through the wine glass you see her, like half of her face is a skull. This is like really, really cool cover art as well. So for that, it's like we've got all the entire published run of Chamber of Chills, which is 26 issues. And so you'll not only be able to get these kind of iconic covers, but also these full runs of these different titles. And then for anyone that chooses to get the full run, we've designed this incredible kind of collector's box for it. So, absolutely designed to like go on the bookshelf, and then just to drive people crazy, Tiny, and sorry, not sorry to you. When you get all of the runs in this collection, the spines of all the collector's boxes line up to make one big image. It's pretty awesome. So it's just a lot of my late nights over the past few weeks have been all of the production for all of this stuff, but it's so fun. It's so cool. Yeah,
I bet. Yeah, no, I mean, that's, it's like what I'm obsessed with. So my next questions, which, and I'm sure you've got a ton more to talk about, is kind of, I mean, I've already kind of been checking it out, but I know you can go to the Kickstarter page. It's not live yet, right? So, I mean, there's no
so if you go to Macroverse, the easy way is go to macroverse.com, and then there's a button right at the top which says register on Kickstarter. And if you do that, here, I'll share my screen again. If you do that, then it'll take you to the Kickstarter campaign page. So the way that this works now with Kickstarter is that there's the Chamber of Chills cover, the Kickstarter page is not, so you can't yet order or back anything from the Kickstarter, but you can see this kind of core 15 iconic covers, which we call the Frightening 15. And so there will be bundles of these available in some cool tiers and different. Do I want to spoil it? We've got some very cool cover treatments for these as well. So there's a basic set, and then some really cool collectible editions with different cover treatments. And so that's the core offering is the Frightening 15, and then you can expand from that into the full runs of each of the different 4 titles. And then we've got a couple of mega bundles for those that want to go nuts and get everything, which would be me if it were me. So you come to the Kickstarter, and then you click this beautiful black button over here which says notify me on launch, and then that'll let you know when the campaign does actually go live. We've got something fun planned for people that back it in the first 24 and 48 hours. And then we've got a bunch of really cool stretch goals that will do all kinds of upgrades to the packaging and to what you get over the course of the campaign, which will run for about a month. And then we believe that these will be in people's hands for the holidays. So basically the campaign will launch in about a week, and a month later, everything gets fulfilled and shipped out after that. And then people should have product in hand for the holidays. And then I won't talk about it yet, but there is a very, very special thing that we've built that you can do once you get the physicals in your hand. So for anyone that is familiar with some of the stuff that we've done over the past, these dots do connect back to each other. So the ultimate physical collectibles with some special sauce once you have them in your hands.
I'm starting to drool.
That is my goal. That is my goal. So.
Oh
Yes.
gosh. Like the gears are just spinning. Like I'm like gonna need a second job and like yeah, no, you know how I am. I'm thinking
I
the
know
same thing. Like
it's not nice post hurricane, but you know,
I must have the big picture.
I mean, I will
Oh,
admit to being a little nefarious with that when we started to realize that that we could do that. We're like, we
yeah,
got to do that. So,
of course.
it's a little bit notorious. There's no doubt about it. But you know, I basically as I work on this stuff, I'm like, what would drive me crazy where I had to have it?
That would do it.
That
You
would do
can't
it.
not
Yeah.
complete the box set.
Exactly.
Oh man.
So yeah, it's exciting stuff, and I think, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, like this is something we spent a lot of time developing, all of the moving parts. Like, you know, there's a saying in software, and there's a saying in software. There's a saying in startup land, which is, you know, pixels are easy, atoms are hard. Meaning that, you know, building something in software much easier than building something. Usually they are talking about hardware. But I feel like we've now crossed into our version of that, where it's like, you know, now we're dealing with like production schedules for printing and ordering paper and making sure that we have the right, you know, different paper stocks in enough quantity at the right time. And then how are we fulfilling this and printing and shipping, and all that's been going on for now the past, you know, multiple months to make sure that everything was lined up just so that this could happen, you know, flawlessly. You know, but
It's just crazy to me that they can even like duplicate the paper. I mean, I didn't realize that it was like still being made.
Yeah.
So
It's
you
not
know,
still being.
that's what I figured.
That's
So, I mean,
the crazy thing. Yeah, none of this is like off the shelf. Like we've had to do so much engineering and development. And I will make a big point of saying there is no AI involved in making this. This is handcrafted, bespoke. You know, there is technology involved. There's a pretty good amount of technology involved, but it is, as again, sort of it's more of a reverse engineering process than it is anything else. And so being able to take these things, bring them essentially back to the printer plates, and then reprint them in the way that they were printed at the time that they were printed, is pretty special and pretty awesome. So I do think this is one of those things where, you know, we've managed to put the right team and the right people and the right pieces of the puzzle together, where this would be very challenging for literally anyone else on the planet to do. And
you can't.
that makes it even more special.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then, you know, I teased a little bit in saying that, you know, we chose to start with this pre-code horror collection because I do think there's something very special about this assortment of books. But without making any announcements before I should, this is just the beginning of the line that Authentic Editions will be putting out. So using this same approach, same, you know, methodology, the kind of a similar style of releasing. You know, there is a lot more material that we have planned, especially into 2025. And again, without announcing anything I shouldn't yet, we are talking to everyone that you might think of about being able to release this stuff. So I think we're in for a very exciting next year. And I will say one of the things that has been most impactful to me in our experience on the Web3 side of things, which we are carrying forward into this kind of next generation, is the same concept. The more you participate, the more we're determined to give you. And so I think it'll still be it'll be the end of the year before we're able to kind of demonstrate that, you know, kind of pay off that promise in some of the ways that we've wanted to. but it will become more apparent how we're going to do that. And so anyone that's collected anything from us, up to this point, you will not get lost in this evolution. And those that, continue to participate, and we hope a lot more people that do, come in through this side of things. We've got a way of now bringing them kind of into this larger ecosystem, which I think has been sorely lacking in the traditional, the way that things have been done on the Web3 side of things. We've talked about on previous shows. I think I think it got it backwards, and I think this is actually now going to be the right way to bring people into the aspects of that we fell in love with and that we continue to champion, but do it in a very seamless, very fun way where we really can focus on rewarding the people that are, the most engaged, the most supportive, in some ways that you don't even know about yet, but will be very, very cool.
Man, I'm excited. I got a few things I can picture in my head, some things I kind of hoped for, but I'm excited to see the digital side of the collecting. Because I've got, even with just the small amount of detail, I can almost imagine what I'm going to be holding in my hands when those come. But there's I feel like the digital side could be anything, and that's I'm excited about that as well, especially to get people onboarded to Web3 that are coming from the comic side, because that's, I think, was one of our original goals, and it's just
I think, as we've talked about previously, I think, for us, the conversation even internally has really shifted where it's not even about onboarding people to Web3. It's just about giving people great stuff and then great experiences. And, that we've chosen a certain type of technology to be able to do that. We're really consciously and intentionally picking the tools that make the most sense to deliver the best possible experience for collectors. And I think it's been a real valuable lesson over the past couple of years, seeing the things that worked and seeing the things that didn't work. And then, something we've talked about from the beginning, which is how does the behavior that we want to reward and recognize mirror the things that we already do with the things that we're passionate about, the things that we collect, the things that we're engaged with. And comics have always felt like such a natural fit there because of the nature of it being this two-sided thing. There's one part of comics which is all about the entertainment value, and there's the other side of comics which is all about the collectability of them. And, as someone that has spent my whole life being engaged in both sides of that equation, that's really been what I've been trying to figure out with Macroverse from the beginning, is how to deliver both sides of that equation, and at the same time push the medium forward, create more opportunities for creators, right size some of the economics for creators and people that are engaged in the ecosystem, create ways for fans to become part of the creative process. All of those things are elevated and accentuated by being able to bring this kind of 360 approach now to, how do you want to consume and collect these different types of new content, existing content, old content that you've never seen before, and being able to bring those things all into one ecosystem, I think just becomes really interesting, and is actually just the first thing in the roadmap that we've been working on now for the last year or so. So it is really nice to be able to start talking about this part of it. And, I really hope people will support the campaign, engage with with authentic editions. I really do think people are going to enjoy the experience of having them in their hands, and then what you're going to be able to do with them once they're in your hands. And it's just the beginning of this next round of all the stuff that's coming that we're working on.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, man.
Yes, sir.
I couldn't be more excited, and I've been I think probably 3 months now, like leading up to October since you originally
Yes.
said, like, you know, this
Yes.
and start talking about it. So
I realized. Good.
It's like better than anticipated. I mean, um, you know, I think, you know, we had an idea that, you know, it was going to, especially with the Titan and the other stuff coming, like that it would be some sort of physical comic or something. But to hear the extent of the process that you guys are going through, like, and I'm
Insanity.
sure that, no, and I mean, like, I'm sure that's like just, you know, like, you're making it sound simple still, kind of. I mean, oh, we just like reinvented this paper and technology, no big deal. But no, man, I like it. I can't wait. I really can't wait. I'm like speechless on this one for sure. And I know. So what I was gonna say, I've already started, and I know like what I you know, I'm spending a lot of time just kind of telling people, hey, check out this Kickstarter page, check out Macroverse.
Yeah.
But anybody watching this, obviously, as always, like, share, you know, tell everybody to watch this, but definitely point them in the direction of the Kickstarter page and get some eyeballs on it, because it looks phenomenal. And I know they're gonna go quick. I mean, I already know that.
They are going to go quick. Yeah. I feel very confident. And yeah, I mean, it's great stuff that I think there is a real appetite for. Certainly if you look at, you know, how the original books are being snapped up right now, there is a real appetite for them. So if you're not in the market for spending, you know, $5,000 to $10,000 on a single issue, this is a very, very good option for getting a hold of this stuff. And in some ways, you know, I think what I think is also kind of exciting about it is, you know, this is literally, I mean, I get confused with time, because for me, like the 80s and 90s are still kind of like my origin point.
I still feel like that's like 10 years ago.
You know? Yeah, exactly. So, you know, when I think about this, it's like, you know, it's incredible that, you know, so this stuff comes from the 40s and 50s. So let's say the 50s. So now we're about to be 2025. So what is that? 75 years. You know, so much of this material is at least 75 years old. And as you mentioned earlier, you know, this was way before people had any sort of mentality around comics being collectible. So this was an era where, you know, you pull it off the newsstand, you read it, you throw it in the corner, you give it to a friend, your parents throw it in the trash. Like, you know, this is just, there was no value on the object itself. This really was the era of just like very consumable. And as a result of that, you know, these things become very rare, and especially getting them in good condition becomes very hard to do. I will at another time, after everything is out and people have them in their hands, we'll do a whole conversation about what it took to get a hold of some of this stuff. And
I was gonna say, because that's what's been going through my mind is you see, I have every comic, and I'm thinking, man, how did you get it? Because
there is a real art and science at every part of this project that you know, well, we've been lucky in a few places. We've been relentless in a few places. But it's been an adventure to put this all together. But
I mean, I'm even curious, like, stuff like to put out a facsimile. I mean, how does it work with like the rights of the original writers and printers and all that stuff? I mean, it's like, because it's already been published, so I imagine, you know, it's
wherever there are rights holders, you have to negotiate with those right holders. So you know, this stuff is all because of the nature of this particular era. That the rights are all over the map. But with I don't know, let's say something like random name out of a hat. I don't know what's another well-known collection or brand. I don't know, pick one, whatever you're thinking of, pick one. In the case of whatever that is that you're thinking of, you just need to negotiate licensing deals to be able to have the rights to do it. So,
No,
yeah, whatever those names might be, just, that it just becomes part of the process.
It's just, I think for like every facsimile I've seen, it's always the same publisher, just years and years later. You know what I mean? So I think this is just kind of like new in my eyes in that aspect as well. Just seeing a whole nother publishing company come in and reproduce this stuff is kind of
the closest. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think we are the first to do it in this quantity. Probably the closest thing is, I don't know if you know the company Taschen. Taschen has done, I believe they're a French publisher, but they've done a number of individual kind of very high quality, reproductions of various things. Nothing that's kind of gone the extra mile of kind of getting back to the original, kind of dot patterns and paper and the kind of level of care and detail that we brought here. But they do great. And so like Taschen is, very high end collectible kind of editions of a lot of art books and those kinds of things. So I think they've been one of the few kind of external publishers that's been able to do stuff with Marvel or DC or, some of the more well-known, publishing companies. But generally, you're right. It's generally the same company. What's been fascinating as we've, gotten into the weeds on all this stuff is many of those original publishers also do not have their original source files. Because of the time, because of that same disposability. There are stories from Marvel in the early days of Marvel where you would go to the Marvel office and there would just be stacks of original artwork just like sitting on the floor, because it wasn't treated as a valuable thing. It was just like, production.
Yeah.
And so I've heard a couple of stories from people at conventions where it's like, from people from that era where it's like, they could literally walk into the Marvel office and, probably weren't supposed to, but could walk out with, 20, 30, 40, pages sometimes from like Kirby or, kind of some of the just unbelievable kind of stuff. And then those things would show up at, the little flea market comic conventions that there were at the time and sell for like $20, so it's, it is just such a reflection of the time and the perception of the work at that time. But yes, so it's been, it is, I think I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I think this is the first time where a, kind of a third party publisher is able to reproduce, some of this material. And it's because we're doing it in a way that is different. And so, in some of the conversations we've been having, like it would be a total non-starter if we were just going to say like, hey, we'd like to also publish the stuff that you publish. Like they're like, why would we do that?
Yeah.
But because we're differentiating it in this really unique way, like that has opened the door to a bunch of those conversations. So yes.
Well, like I tell so many people, like the reason I collect a lot of the older stuff I do is not just, because I like the stories and the content, but it's like, to me, it's art and it's preservation. I mean, I know the ones that I have are gonna stay in good condition, and they're, like they're gonna stay, that same age that I got them, and like it's kind of the same thing. I mean, like you said, some of those books almost don't exist, and this is a way to bring them back and kind of like, like almost like, get rid of extinction. I mean, like it's just super cool. In my mind, that's stuff that like, I
honestly, I do honestly feel that way. And it's one of the things that I feel passionate about with this is it's like, when you realize that something like Suspense Comics #3 is this, meaningful, iconic, kind of moment in history, in the history of comics, and there are 30 copies and you need, in many cases, high 5 to low 6 figures to be able to touch that. To me, it's actually it feels really good to be able to say, like, I actually believe, if anything, us doing this will make the price of the originals go up.
Original.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think
the cool thing is,
but at the same time democratizes it for people to understand how cool they are.
well, and for people that don't understand like the CGC ratings and stuff like that, it's essentially 1 to 10. You're basically never going to see a 10. I mean, a 9.8 is a 10 basically.
Yeah.
But to see a 1, a 1.0, a 1.0 is going to have maybe a detached cover,
It could be
pages.
anything.
You're not going to be holding it and flipping pages and reading for the most part. I mean, it's going to crumble if so it's all there. It's in its full, but it's not in great condition. So, I mean, like, same thing. I mean, like, to pay all that money for that, you're not going to like pick that thing up and flip the pages and, you might get the smell.
Most collectors are never even going to look at it. Like, you're buying it because it's valuable, because it's meaningful, because it is this artifact. But yeah, even the people that can afford to buy them, 99% of those people are not taking it out of the case. So you're seeing the front cover and the back cover through plastic. You're not cracking that thing open, like leafing through it. That's so, even the people that own the current, collectible CGC versions, is a great option to have a copy you can actually read.
I fight that battle every day, and to each their own. I totally respect the people that love to purchase and show off their graded copies, but man, like, there's so much good stuff in the pages too. So absolutely. I mean, I don't read mine often, but every once in a while I'll pull a couple out and
well, this is where I got into trouble. This is my first experience with debt as a teenager. Is where I got into trouble is I got very into, again, sort of the both sides of this, the storytelling and the artistry of comics and the collectability of comics, and especially in the Image era, where really so much of the conversation was about collectability. There was almost nothing that I didn't buy 2 copies of. And so, it's like, literally, it was like, this is the one to bag and board. This is the one to very carefully read. So almost my entire collection is doubles. And having that hard conversation at 14 with the comic store owner of like, kid, you got like $700 of comics in your pull box, and how are we going to take care of that? You got to stop ordering more comics. And at 14, that was not an insignificant thing to have to figure out. So had to get very cheesy at that point, because I really did get into a thing of like getting the previous catalog and going like, oh yes, this and this and this and this.
This looks good. This looks good. Yeah.
So yes, we've got a cool solution for people that want to have 2 copies, but also you can have 2 copies.
So now I know that's completely separate from mixed print, right?
So it's separate but not unrelated. So I think the way I think about what we're doing right now is there's really 3 core pillars. I'd say there's 4 core pillars to how Macroverse it is evolving, and again, this is what I kind of think of as Macroverse 3.0. So there's the pure app, kind of platform side, which will continue to evolve. You're going to see the mobile app kind of meld with the other stuff that we're doing, which in some very cool ways over the next 6 months. So there's the purely digital side, and part of the evolution there is we've been building a set of tools which are going to be, we think, be very impactful for other creators as well. So opening up kind of our internal toolbox to collaborators, creators, even small publishers, and people that want to take advantage of this tool set we've been developing. So there's that piece of it. There's Authentic Editions, which is really about this kind of preservation of classic material. So Authentic Editions as a endeavor, as a process, and as a kind of set of technologies and methodologies, really is about comics from the 30s through the 70s at the high end, and mostly targeted this kind of 40s through 60s, kind of era. So there's that piece of it. And then Mixprint kind of bridges the gap where we're dealing with new material, potentially also some of this classic material, partnering with other publishers, doing our own stuff, but is this right now kind of all one of X physical process. And then we'll also get folded into some of the things that we're doing digitally as well. So all these things are interrelated. They're all going to connect. And the way that our platform is evolving is a way to actually see all of those connections and interact with those connections in some very novel and new ways. And something that we haven't really seen in the comics industry. This is not a comicsology, 2.0. This is kind of a rethinking of what is a digital comics platform when you've got all of the different ways of interacting with comics content, fandom, and creative tools. So it's kind of bringing all those things together. So, and then an addition to that, which we haven't really talked about, is part of our partnership with Titan allows us to now also take things that start digital and bring them into kind of modern physical incarnations. And then, ultimately bring things that have started physical and bring them into digital incarnations and kind of cross both of those sides of the equation as well. So it feels like a very robust, multifaceted offering, but it all comes together in kind of the core of what we're building into the next generation of the platform.
Yeah. I mean, sounds super cool. I guess the reason I asked that is just curious if the same mixed print technology would be incorporated into the, like the one-on-one style covers and stuff into the authentic editions.
Interesting thought. Yeah. No, I mean, there's no reason that it won't be. So I will just answer that one directly. There will be mixed print editions of some of this stuff. It's not part of the original. It's not part of this initial Kickstarter. Like our initial releases for authentic editions are always going to be faithful reproductions. But there's certainly some fun to be had with, some of these iconic covers. And, you've seen Marvel and other companies do this where it's like, oh, Alex Ross doing a version of X-Men #1, like that stuff is super cool. And why would we want to miss out on that? So there will absolutely be, mixed print editions of stuff. There will be, homage editions of stuff down the road. Like, there's a lot of fun to be had with some of this stuff, but we want to make sure that the core offering, is really true to the mission, which is this, why we call them authentic editions. It's like really authentic reproduction of the original material.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I'm excited, man. That's like, I've been waiting. I think I saw the original first little piece of news for it last week when we were supposed to be streaming, and I was like, we should be talking about this.
So I'm curious. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Yes,
I've been just kind of sitting on it for a week and sharing it and talking to everybody I could, but I mean, I've been dying to talk to you about it and just get everybody else the big story, because it's just been, little tweets or whatever you want to call them now, or little announcements. So, man, I'm just excited. I'm so excited.
Actually, I want to point anyone that is watching at this point, or if you see this later, if you do go to the Macroverse Twitter feed, this is just one. This doesn't even do it justice, but it's pretty astounding. If you go to the Macroverse Twitter right now, and I'll share this as well so you can see it. But you won't get the detail if you don't actually go look at it yourself. But if you go, let's see, x.com/Macroverse. Let's see if I have to log in or if it'll let me just go to the feed. Okay. So clearly this is what our tease about the not approved by the Comic Code Authority has been about. But this is a panel from one of the comics that we've been working on. And so again, you can't really see the detail until you like actually open it up full screen by going to our page here. But just as a individual panel, like you can see that all of the pink, tone of her face is, all these little red dots. And then the way that you get the deeper red of her, hat and her headgear is this different type of texture. It's almost kind of a painted print making kind of a texture. And then, same thing with the blue on her shirt. And then even the way that the ink is applied in the black areas, like it's not a solid black like you would get on a traditional comic, because the way that the ink is applied to the paper leaves this kind of printed texture. And so this is an actual panel from a process, from a reprocessed, re-engineered copy of one of the issues that we're doing. And it just gives a taste of just the quality and the fidelity of what this is. It's like you can zoom into these things to make them movie poster sized and not lose any detail, and it's pretty astounding. So very proud of what this all is.
Should be, as you should be. So man, super cool. I did see Discord, there's an announcement for a video, quick little video that I think Adam posted. So same thing. What's that?
Yep, absolutely. If he did, that's awesome, because that's another piece of what we've been working on. So
I just encourage, I don't know if it's something that's like out, but it's on Discord. I encourage everybody to come check it out. It's on there. I saw it.
Absolutely. Yes, this first cat is out of the first bag, and I could not be happier about it. So I am curious. I was going to ask you, we've been hinting at deflecting, answering questions for a few months now. Other than kind of knowing that we were doing something physical, did you guess any of this part of it?
No, what's funny is even you asked me if we had pre-code horror, and it didn't even cross my mind, because right now it's just popping off anyway. Like pre-code horror is like very highly sought after, and it's just making like all the like golden age Western stuff. Like it's just making a huge comeback anyway. And so it didn't even faze me, like it's I people ask me that question so often, and I was looking through it, and it's just like, man, I mean, I'm like, no, it's like the little bit that there is sells so quick and so expensive. I mean, I think last time he had any, I think they were selling for maybe like 500 a piece on most of them or so. And that was like quick. So, I mean, it's just, I didn't see that coming for sure. And when I saw the Kickstarter page, and also I don't think that I totally expected it to go through Kickstarter either. So that was a pleasant surprise as well. Because I know, most of the stuff has been, for the most part, self-released. And now with the Titan, I mean, like, again, I had to go to the local shop to pre-order, and that for me was kind of new. So it's definitely going more towards like the traditional comic side, which I absolutely love. I mean, couldn't be happier.
That's awesome.
Now, what I'm expecting is when I get all my wonderful physical books to be able to get the NFT and read all of my physicals that I don't want to touch on the app.
Interesting theory. I don't know that you'll ever see the word NFT from us again, but interesting theory.
Yeah, no, I get that too. But you get what I'm saying. Digital collectible, however you want to say it. I'm hoping I don't have to really put my fingers on my books too much. Maybe just one.
Seems like something people might want. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. But
I won't be too buttheaded about this. So actually, yes, that is exactly what you're going to be able to do. And we'll make a bigger deal and an official announcement about it, down the road. But yeah, part of what we've built is, you'll be able to redeem the essentially digital twin with the physical copy. And that is again just the beginning, but it is something that I'm very excited about as well. Yeah.
I would have it no other way, because like I said, with the technology, I'm just praying. I'm like, man, I don't want to have to crack every one of these open, read them all. Because I want to.
But in true Macroverse fashion, there's some special sauce built into that.
And that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I have found an outlet for myself for all of the comics I have, where I can read them digitally for basically for free, but it's still your typical PDF, zoom in, zoom out, swipe the page. It's just frustrating. But if there's ever that really old one I just don't want to handle, I can go in and I can still read it. But that's, for me as a collector, that's like critical for me. I gotta have it. I gotta have it online. I'll scan it in myself if I have to.
Yeah, it's actually funny. That's as we've gotten to learn more about a bunch of these old books. Like, I don't know if this is what you're using, but it's like there are these kind of internet archives of things that people have scanned themselves. It's like if you just want to go, kind of see generally pretty low resolution, bad scans of a lot of this stuff. It is out there. There's no way that you can take that and print it and actually have something that is the book. It's it is pretty interesting. But we live in a world where everything is available, so now it's like, how do you make it special? Awesome. Well, I think we can
you already made the digital side special, so I'm just curious to see even how that evolves, because I mean, even just going from digital to widescreen blew my mind. Like what's next? It's just I mean, I never know what to expect.
Well, you got that one right, so good job.
Well,
very cool.
I feel like that was a given, but even still, like, there will be so many surprises in there. I mean,
it's good stuff. I'm very pleased with where we're at. It's been a long time coming, but I'm very pleased with where we're at. So I think, look, for my call to action for everyone is, sign up on the Kickstarter page. Like, there's nothing you could do that will be more supportive for what we're building, or, get something cooler in your hands from us at the moment than doing that. Of course, we're still putting stuff out on Drip, and we'll continue to do so. We'll have a series of additional announcements between now and the end of the year that are both extensions of what you already know about, as well as a couple of additional things that will add on to what we've now announced as the suite of things that Macroverse is up to. So definitely in true collector's fashion, having this first release of authentic editions will have some implications as we get to stuff further down the road. So I definitely encourage anyone that is interested at all to, register for the Kickstarter, pick up this first batch, whatever you can reasonably acquire, and enjoy truly a walk through the history of comics. I mean, there's just, if you can get into the vibe of this stuff, which to me is not hard to do, there's just a style and an era that is missing from the world that is now going to be available for people to have literally in their hands. So I hope that's you, whoever you are. But again, macroverse.com, click on the button for the Kickstarter and just click the button to pre-register, and then you'll get an email when the campaign goes live, which we expect to be in a little over a week. We got some nice coverage on Bleeding Cool last week as well. So, one of the big comics news sites, and we got some other marketing and promotional stuff that should be hitting over the next little bit. So you'll probably see this popping up in some news feeds and things from time to time. And then one thing I haven't talked about is we've got some kind of fun collaborations coming around this as well. So if you're engaged with us anywhere, you'll start to see some of that stuff pop up too. More to come, but it's a good time to be able to start talking about it. And from here on, I think every week when we talk about what's coming up, we'll be able to give more specific updates and kind of dive into more of the details of specific elements of the campaign and all that good stuff. So there we go. Tiny, where can people find you? Where should people connect with you?
Well, I always say number one, Discord. So come into the Discord, just in the general chat, and I am there always. Other than that, X at Secret Agent Tiny. I still always want to say Tiny Universe, but Secret Agent Tiny is where you'll find me.
Some monster is camping out on that username. So yes,
I think you know what I think. I think actually it was mine, and I.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I just created another one.
If it was yours, you should be able to get back actually, but. Oh, wow. All right. So Secret Agent Tiny, you can find me at Ebonverse just about everywhere. Macroverse is at Macroverse on X, and Macroverse HQ just about everywhere else. And again, number one thing right now is just register for the Kickstarter, back the Kickstarter, and go on this next generation of the ride. It's going to be a good one. Going to absolutely be a good one. So Tiny, thank you for hosting again. I'm glad you're okay.
Oh man,
post and
thank you.
We will be back.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for talking about all this and getting the details out, because I've been very impatiently waiting for this day.
Absolutely, my pleasure. But we'll be back next week to share more and go from there. And so everybody have a wonderful morning, evening, or night wherever you are in the world. And we'll be back same Macroverse time-ish, same